Surprise! Yes, we usually do this on Monday nights. It's usually a Monday night thing where we do our weekly live stream the Monday after whatever race it is. This week, the Monday after Atlanta, Echo Park, whatever you want to call it. So yes, this is a little bit abnormal for the 2025 season, but since there's nothing Sunday afternoon here, I figured do my race rewatch here and give you the SVG recap thing right now. So you get it sooner. You get to know that tomorrow night, Monday night, or I guess for some of you that will be Tuesday morning, we'll do our normal weekly live stream. We will talk about the race weekend at Atlanta, now Echo Park Speedway, and we will go into some more details that we weren't able to go into late last night here in the United States. So let's dive into Shane Van Gisbergen's day at Atlanta. First of all, it's in Atlanta, Georgia. They have renamed the track to Echo Park Speedway. I'm still going to call it Atlanta because I'm used to it, and yeah, that you can call it Atlanta or Echo Park. I do not care. As always, let's start with the tweet, though. Post-race tweet says, good first half of the race. Got points in both stages, and it was fun running up front. We got unlucky getting taken out, and then we had damage. But it was really promising to run up front in the WeatherTech Chevy. Smiley face emoji. So, yes, Shane Van Gisbergen, for what I believe is the first time in his Cup career, has scored stage points on an oval track in the Cup Series, if I did not specify that already. So, very big day for him to score some stage points, to be up front. He was in the top 10, top 15, the majority of this race before ultimately being spun out and getting some damage from that spin that we will talk about, and we will also look at different angles of that incident. So, as I said, Atlanta Motor Speedway is the former name. It's now Echo Park Speedway, 1.54 miles, which is equivalent to 2.48, I rounded up, kilometers. It's a weird hybrid of an intermediate racetrack in Daytona and Talladega. If you guys remember, Daytona and Talladega are the super speedways. These are the tracks where there's pack racing, 28 to 30 cars within just a second or two of each other. The big crashes where everyone gets taken out, but you can't pull far away because of the engine restriction or the tapered space or whatever they use nowadays. Point being, that is the chaotic racing. This is the type of racing where anyone can be up front. Anyone can lead laps. This is where we see our wacky winners. But Atlanta, back in 2021, over the offseason, in between 2021 and 2022, it was announced that Atlanta would undergo a reconfiguration. Atlanta used to be a standard intermediate racetrack, similar to Texas, similar to Charlotte, Vegas, Kansas. The tracks that there's multiple grooves on these tracks. It's very fast, very quick, but you have to brake, you have to drive the car a little bit harder than you do at a super speedway so the pack gets spread out. The tires wear. Normal intermediate track stuff that you don't see at Daytona and Talladega. Well, imagine if Daytona and Talladega and Texas, Charlotte, Vegas, they had a baby. That is now Atlanta Motor Speedway. Atlanta is essentially a hybrid where we have the pack racing, where you can't pull ahead. Everyone's kind of within a couple of seconds of each other, but you can maneuver, unlike Daytona and Talladega nowadays, where it's just gridlock, fuel saving. You can't really make any moves at Daytona and Talladega in this new car, whereas Atlanta, you don't have to save fuel. You're always going flat out. You have to lift. You have to actually make moves to get up to the front. You can't just sit in line because everyone's going to blow by you. It's a much different beast at Atlanta compared to the other super speedways of Talladega and Daytona. So now that you know some more about the track, now that you know that it's not quite Talladega, Daytona, but it's definitely not Texas, Charlotte, Vegas, Kansas, let's talk about Shane Van Gisbergen's history at Atlanta Motor Speedway. He has made 2 Cup Series starts at this track. Finished 23rd this past February, finished in 32nd last September with Colleague Racing. He has raced here in the Xfinity Series. Of course, if you remember his first ever race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, he finished 3rd in the Xfinity race. Qualified 35th, but qualifying is irrelevant at the super speedways, especially Atlanta nowadays. All of Trackhouse was terrible in qualifying, qualified in the 30s. But the fact of the matter is that race pace matters. How your car handles in the race matters much more than it does in terms of the qualifying speed. Atlanta, you can move up through the field with ease if you make the right moves, if you have a good handling car. If you qualify, like for example, I think Chase Briscoe qualified in the top 10, but his car handled horribly. He dropped like a rock at the beginning. So while the qualifying speed might not be there, it could just simply be Trackhouse was setting up for the race pace, not the qualifying pace, because we don't have practice at Atlanta. So just 12 laps in, SVG's made up 6 spots. He's up to the 29th position. And then on lap 31, he's up to 25th. So at this point, he's made up 10 positions. Whereas Daytona and Talladega, if it's not fuel saving mode, you're kind of stuck. You can't really do much, as I said. First caution came on lap 37 for rain. At this point, he had made his way up to the 23rd position. They wasted about 8 to 10 laps here just under caution in the rain, seeing if it would go away. It did not. So ultimately, there ended up being a red flag. Red flag rules, you cannot touch the car in terms of adjustments, in terms of tires. You cannot do anything to the car except put anti-rain measures. So you can put a cover on the car. They have to wrap certain parts of the car because they can't get wet, or I don't know if damages, but they can't get wet. And then you are also allowed, once you take those covers off, you're allowed to wipe down the car, make sure the car is dry. And if the driver needs assistance getting back into the car, get the air hose in, get the radio plugged in, all that stuff, get the wheel all set up. In terms of that, that's all you can do. Can't touch the tires, you can't touch the hood flaps, you can't touch anything. No adjustments can be made under red flag conditions in NASCAR, unlike other motorsports. After this red flag, Shane Van Gisbergen and Steven Duran opted to pit under that, red flag turned into caution. He had said right before the rain break that he was pretty free. It was bouncing initially, but it eventually went away, and he had said that he could see other people struggling with similar things. As I said, they pitted for 4 tires. Usually at these super speedways, tires don't make a difference. Because you're going so fast, because you're in a pack, they don't want to make tires that wear out, that could potentially cause big problems. Because could you imagine someone blowing a tire in the middle of a 35, 40 car field and causing a big one? Yeah, it would not be pretty. So usually we have harder tires at these tracks because frankly, it's not worth it. For example, Daytona and Talladega, you'll see guys pit 40 laps into a run and not take tires or only take 2 tires. It just doesn't matter. But Atlanta, yesterday, it kind of mattered. Now, not necessarily 5 to 6 laps, like the tires are falling off like they do at a Darlington or something, but you could maneuver a little bit better if you had just somewhat fresh grip compared to a car that was out on older tires. So they pit for 4 tires. They end up restarting 24th in the stage. I think other guys who pitted were like Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, and all these guys who pitted and had the 4 fresh tires. As I said, it's not like Darlington where you just blow by everyone on fresh tires, but it was an obvious difference, 45 to 50 laps difference of tires, because SVG, Bell, Bubba, as I said, they were moving up through the field. In just 6 laps, SVG made up about 10 positions, and he put himself in position to potentially score his first oval stage points. And then Christopher Bell loses it, SVG with a front row view of it as well. And guess what? That's the end of stage 1. They crashed with only 3 to go, 4 to go in the stage. Caution comes out. Shane Van Gisbergen, who he wasn't really close to hitting anything, but he did have to take some maneuver to avoid the wreck. He said, "Woo, holy." Mentions that the car was tight but good. He ends up finishing 8th in the stage, which means 3 whole stage points. His first oval stage points of his Cup career happened. He scored stage points at COTA, at Mexico, but that's expected. But for an oval, halfway through the season, he finally gets his first oval points. So once again, they pit at the end of this stage, and you're probably sitting there wondering why. They just pitted for 4 tires. What's the plan, Well, the plan for Steven Duran was to not pit for 4 tires again, but instead to just top off on fuel. While it's not the fuel-saving Daytona Talladega, still, it's always good to have some extra fuel. And the second stage, much longer than the first, you're going to have to pit again. The objective is to have the shortest possible pit stop in order to make up track position. So they pit fuel only. They end up coming out first of everyone who pitted. They end up restarting 10th. Zane Smith makes a big block on Shane Van Gisbergen, and that's literally the biggest thing that happened that lap. Nothing bigger. Definitely not a 23-car pileup. Yeah. Shane Van Gisbergen missed a 23-car pileup due to Zane Smith blocking him, I would argue. Because if SVG's like one lane up, maybe 1.5 lanes up, Denny Hamlin's clipping him, and he's taking a nasty hit. But that did not happen. Giant crash happens. SVG avoids it. Josh Williams said something really funny over the radio, said, there's literally 10 cars left. There was basically 10 to 15 cars left that were competitive after this crash. I mean, this took out some big names. Denny Hamlin, William Byron. I mean, as I said, 23 cars were involved in this incident. So it was a massive crash. It was a race-changing crash. And usually in instances like this where there's a big crash really early, this is lap 69 of 260, guys. When there's a big crash like this early in a race at a super speedway, usually everyone stops. Like for the rest of the race, for example, the 2021 Daytona 500. Huge crash, lap 14. It takes out half the field or something. After that, nothing. The most boring race I've ever seen. Single file for about 165, 170, 180, however many laps it was, of just nothing until the last lap when they decide to pass again, and there's once again a giant wreck. So usually that happens. That was not the case, though. Everyone was racing like crazy. By the way, I do recommend everyone go and watch the full race highlights. Incredible race last night. Point being, race-altering crash. We see guys pit once again. SVG restarts third place because they stay out this time. They end up getting into second place for just a second, like a split second. I got a picture of it on the TV, so do with that what you will. But as high as second place, didn't lead any laps like he did in the spring, but he did get up to second place. And after this, I mean, genuinely, he just ran like 5th to 15th the rest of the race. Never really got back up into the top 5 like he did that one stint. His car was obviously pretty solid for their standards, what this year has been for the 88 team, but they were still not as good as Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Brad Keselowski, Tyler Reddick, and a couple other guys, Chris Buescher, just to name a few, but they had a legitimate shot at the top 10. They were fast, they were competitive, they scored stage points in stage 1. They end up going on to score stage points in stage 2. They had to avoid an incident. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Eric Jones end up Stenhouse puts Jones in the wall. SVG has to avoid it. And then for that final stint of stage number 2, runs top 10 the majority of that final stint. That final stint was like 48 laps, I think. He ran inside the top 10, or if not 11th or 12th, the majority of that final stint. And he ends up finishing 7th in stage 2 and gets 4 points. So 7 whole stage points for Shane Van Gisbergen at an oval. Score stage points in both stages, was probably one of 2 or 3 drivers to do that. So it was a massive day up to this point for Shane Van Gisbergen. Stage points on an oval. Running in the top 10 on an oval, albeit it's a super speedway, and as I said, you could see anyone up there, sure, but for this team and how rough this year has been at times, it's a big deal for them to have some speed, to be up in the top 10, even up in the top 5, kind of looking at the lead there for a second. It's a pretty big deal, I would argue. So after they finish 7th in stage 2, get some extra points, 7 whole stage points on the day, as I said. They end up pitting, taking 4 tires, and then just a few laps later, the race was undone. On top of 3 wide with Ty Gibbs and John Hunter Nemechek, just as those commercials all those years ago said, too much stuff, not enough space. Shane Van Gisbergen was as high as he could possibly be. Otherwise, he would have been in the wall. John Hunter Nemechek down low, Ty Gibbs in the middle. There was nowhere for anyone to go in this situation. So here's one angle of it. I guess this is just the broadcast angle. I'll show you first. Yeah, there you go. Get a look at it. Here's Ty Gibbs' view. Ty Gibbs, as I said, I saw someone in the comments yesterday say something about, someone said in the comments, as I said, it was intentional. No, it's not. You're not intentionally wrecking someone at a super speedway. That's idiotic. You're going to get a long suspension for that. So no, it's not always an intentional crash, guys. Hate to break it to you. Not everything is intentional in NASCAR. Sometimes there's just too much stuff happening at once. Someone miscalculates a move, or In this instance, there's too many cars fighting for the same spot and contact happens. It's racing. Things happen. It's not intentional. So that's Ty Gibbs' view of the situation. Ty Dillon was the car behind. Here is his view of it. As I said, Ty Gibbs, just nowhere really for him to go. He might have washed up the track a little bit, clips the 88, and then clips the 42 when he's trying to save it, trying to stay off the 88. And then when the 42 gets clipped, he nails the 88. The 88 goes spinning, and that ruins their day, and here's why. Now, initially, it seems like a simple, innocent spin. Just go down pit road, fix or get 4 fresh tires. The left rear seemed to be flat, and then also the diffuser flap on the back of the car. Just pop that baby back into place. All is good, right? Right? Wrong! There's this thing called the toe link. Oh, so sensitive, the toe link. The toe link is this part. Here's this little graphic you can look at. I'm not a mechanic. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an expert. But what I do know is when that toe link breaks, things get wobbly and it ruins a day. So essentially what happens if you get hit by another car hard enough, or if you hit the wall hard enough, it breaks the rear toe link, and essentially it ruins your day, as I said. You take 2 or 3 laps to repair this thing. It's just a hassle. It's a long process. It's an essential thing, or else the wheel is literally just going like this all the time and you can't drive straight. So it's a necessity. But when that toe link breaks, it just ruins the day, as I said. At first they came in, they pitted for 4 tires, thought all was well, or maybe just to see if it was just a flat tire and maybe pray it wasn't the toe link. But as a result, it was. SVG pits. He immediately leaves his stall, and about 2 seconds later, he stops the car in the middle of the pit lane because he thought he had a loose wheel, because I'm assuming that's a similar feeling. He starts backing up, and they get on the radio and say, hey, no, just go. We're trying to save a lap here. They end up not saving that lap because the pace car passes them, and at that point, they just come back, and they ended up, I don't know, but they end up having to fix the toe link. As I said, it's a multi-lap process. They end up going 3 laps down. They don't get any of those laps back. They finished 24th, 3 laps down. Steven Duran at the end of the race came over the radio, said that was fun to watch while it lasted in terms of their competitiveness, obviously. Running top 10 in this race, even as high as second place inside the top 5. Scored a bunch of stage points on an oval. That's a big deal for SVG, I would guess. And then ultimately taken out in a crash. No fault of his own, just super speedway racing. Things happen, and ultimately they finished 24th. They end up falling to 32nd in the standings as a result. Good news for Shane Van Gisbergen, if you are a Shane Van Gisbergen fan, the next 2 races, Chicago, you know about that track obviously, and Sonoma. Both tracks have right turns, so do with that information what you will. But thanks for watching this video. I think this was a little bit of a longer one just because I was able to actually do a set video here. So as I said, tomorrow night we will do the Monday after our live stream talking about everything Atlanta. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night.